Hi, hi! Albert Shelton, a doctor and explorer, lived in Tibet for 2 decades in the early 20th century. And based on his notes and references, his wife published a book on the Tibetan folklore in the year 1925. He Went to Heaven is the summary of the Tibetan epic, The Wise Carpenter. Here is the narration in my own words. He went to heaven. In a pristine mountainous Nalong, that's a city in Tibet, there lived a king called Gentong along with his son Genchong. So the king died and his son Genchong became the next ruling king. Among the workers in his kingdom, there were two men who were exceptionally skilled at their respective jobs, but they remained enemies to each other. One was a carpenter and the other was a painter. So one day the painter approached the king and said, "Your Majesty, last night while I was making my bed, an angel appeared and took me to your father in heaven. I went along with her and I was delighted to see your father has become more wealthy in heaven, and he also gave me a letter for you, and here it is." King Genchong opened the letter and read, "My dear son, I am happy in heaven. I have everything I desire except one. I do wish to build a lakang, that is a temple to gods, and for that I need the carpenter to come here. The painter will hand over this letter to you as he knows what I mean." Immediately the king ordered, "Who's right there? Get the carpenter right now." "This letter is certainly from my father, as it is very likely that it is his temperament to build a temple dedicating to gods. I must ensure to fulfill his wishes in heaven." And when the carpenter arrived, the king said, "You listen. My father wants to build a decorative temple for the gods, and he has asked me to send you up to the heaven for doing the same." The king commanded. The carpenter was puzzled at the proposal and thought for a while. This should be the painter's plan to get rid of me. I should outwit him. And without letting the king realize his thoughts, he said, "Sure, my king, but how do I reach heaven?" The king inquired the painter, and the painter said, "He just has to pack all his necessary tools and put it on the ground and sit on the top. Then we shall pile wood around him and set fire, and as the smoke billows, he will smoothly slide into the heaven," the painter explained. All agreed, "But I prefer to do it in my field," said the carpenter. The king agreed and gave them 7 days to prepare for the journey. The carpenter immediately rushed to his wife and said, "Hey, listen, the painter has devised a plan to kill me. I have only 7 days to wait before I am burnt into ashes. So we both should work hard and make a secret tunnel from our house leading to the field where the burning will take place." So this incident is very similar to the incident that happened in Romeo-Juliet story. That is digging a tunnel from the tomb to other place in order to escape. In case if you don't know Romeo-Juliet story, then let me know. I will try to narrate the story sometime. The couple worked day in and day out and finally got the tunnel ready. After a week, the king commanded to execute the plan, and the carpenter sat on top of the tools box and the woods piled around him, and he was set on fire. And soon the smoke coiled up high in the sky. "Look, look, there goes the carpenter to the heaven," gleefully exclaimed the painter. And the people who attended the event saw the smoke and then they returned to their houses. Everyone along with the king believed that the carpenter had reached heaven and the king's wish will now be fulfilled. The carpenter went to his house through the tunnel that was dug earlier and stayed indoors for several days, similar to our COVID-19 lockdown period. So during that period, he washed himself hard every day and made some clothes like the god's robe. After 3 long months, he wore those garments and emerged out of his house looking like an angel with skin as white as a lily. He then went to the king with a letter from his father. King Zhenchong was startled on seeing him and opened the letter. It said, "Dear Zhenchong, I have come to know that you are ruling the kingdom wisely. Few months ago, on my request, you sent me the carpenter to build the lakang, which he skillfully completed. And now that the temple is built and it's time to paint it beautifully, so you have to send the best painter up here for the job." The king was happy to know that the carpenter made his dead father very happy. He adorned him with great gifts, and the carpenter returned home happily. In the meantime, the king asked for the painter, and he was immediately brought to the courtroom. You're listening to He Went to Heaven, the summary of Tibetan Epic tale, The Wise Carpenter, in the own words of Shylu Winston. So the painter arrived and the king ordered, "The carpenter has built the lakang for my father, and he has brought a letter asking you to go and paint the holy temple. So we will send you up there to finish the task. You have 1 week to prepare for your journey." The painter stared at the carpenter, who was dressed in white gown, wearing the coral neckpiece and looking milky white. He kind of believed everything was true and that the carpenter truly went to heaven and returned. Partially convinced, the painter returned home and piled all his brushes and paint boxes to get ready for the journey to heaven. The day came and the king added few more gifts to send to his father who was in heaven. The painter then sat on the box surrounded by woods, and the guards set fire. Everyone stood there, saw the smoke coiling up and reaching the sky. The carpenter said, "There should be some music and beating of drums and horns to celebrate." And it was done as said. The fire slowly crept the logs and was burning rapidly. Looking at all of this, the painter yelled, I am burning, save me." The blaring noise of the drums and cymbals deafened everyone, and no one heard the painter. Eventually, it was the painter and not the carpenter who went to heaven. That's the end of the epic story, He Went to Heaven, the summary of the Tibetan epic tale, The Wise Carpenter. This story is a great example for the proverb, "The path of a liar is short." Hope you all liked this story. Please do share it with others whom you think will like the story as well. Hasta mañana.